I'm going to bring in Siddharth Zarabi, also editor of Business Today, in this conversation. Siddharth, what's your take on what has been announced? We've been talking about how this was anticipated, however, extremely disappointing, plus the jibe that Trump has taken against us, talking about how we've been dealing with Russia for a while now, announcement of penalty on top of the 25% tariff announcement.
Well, very clearly, this is not a tariff-related action alone.
Yes.
As we've been saying this in the past as well, non-tariff issues which have been highlighted by the US Trade Representative in its report, and I believe now this addition of the Russia element is clearly both a break and a breach in faith in terms of the spirit of the negotiations that we have been having. It's very clear over the past 3 months that India has engaged uh, with a very, very open mind with the United States. And remember, this is the same country which has walked quite a lot in the UK free trade agreement. So it's not as if we are being protectionist, but it's very clear at this stage that President Donald Trump has possibly set in motion a series of events that could be very counterproductive for the overall US strategy for this region. And I'm talking about matters beyond trade. I believe the emphasis on Russian military, Russian energy is completely misplaced. And perhaps this is an indication of frustration on behalf of the United States for being unable to push India on its core concerns of protecting the Indian dairy sector, protecting Indian farmers. We've had hints of that from the Indian establishment over the past 1 month, especially. And coming as it does just a day after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other leaders, including Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, made it very clear in both the upper and the lower house of the Indian Parliament that President Trump had absolutely zero role to play in any sort of ceasefire or cessation of hostilities with regard to Operation Sindoor. I think now this is moved beyond trade, and perhaps our response from the Indian side will take into factor this unfair move by the United States. Does it put the negotiations at risk? I don't think we have a clear answer at this stage yet.
Okay, but what is going to be the impact of, or rather, what would be the significance in this context of the meeting that were to take place, Siddharth, on the 25th of August, something that I asked Pranay as well. Will that change anything, essentially, because we thought that we were still talking, isn't it?
Well, that I heard that question, and what I would add to the previous answer to that is the following. Look at the current state of negotiations that the United States is having with various other countries. Anybody would characterize this, and even the best friend of President Donald Trump's Trumpisms would say that American negotiations with some of its best partners have been characterized by U-turns, confusion, lack of clarity, off-the-cuff statements, and diplomacy over Twitter or Truth Social. Japan, which has been one of the strongest allies of the United States for decades now, left recent negotiations completely bewildered and puzzled as to what does the United States really want from them. This is the case with many other countries. And remember, the centerpiece really of President Trump's actions was to reduce the dependence of America and its economy on China. Yet see the kind of near groveling that the US is to have a trade deal with China. So I think the US establishment believed that brinkmanship can work with India, the kind of brinkmanship that has worked with certain other countries.
Right.
And last minute deals like the European Union. But we must say, and I will quickly just add this point, it's very clear that as far as India and our stance has been, we are willing to continue to trade, but not at the cost of our national security or respect.
And that is something that has been emphasized upon throughout these conversations that we've been having for months together on how our dairy and our agriculture sector has to be protected. Our domestic interests first, like their domestic interests first for them, isn't it? This clearly is something that has irked the US. Siddharth.
Well, absolutely.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the manner in which smaller economies have been dealt with by the United States. For 40 years, 4 decades and more, the United States championed outsourcing of its industries, including industries that cause pollution, including industries that lead to environmental degradation. The developing world, Asia, South Asia, has borne the white man's burden for ensuring that American consumers continue to get cheap goods, cheaper services, and they live off the labor and the dollar exchange rate arbitrage that United States companies are famous for.
That's
President
right.
Trump believes that it's time for Atmanirbhar United States, but clearly every single trade engagement that has been struck so far has not yielded either a reduction in prices for the American consumer or great wins when it comes to domestic manufacturing.
That's
I
right.
keep coming back to this back and forth with China. If China is United States' greatest enemy and long-term rival that can upstage America's stage as the numero uno economic military superpower in the world,
That's
look at
right.
what has happened in the past 90, 100 days.
That's right.
And is there a strategy behind this? I don't know. And in all of that, pushing India into a corner for protecting the energy needs of 1.2 billion Indians when we do not have domestic crude supplies and American crude cannot reach us. We are too far away.
That's right. So
Where
that,
do
like
we
you
go?
rightly said, this has moved way, way beyond trade, hasn't it?